Hey guys, professional angler Paul Mueller here. I want to talk to you about my road to the 2015 Bassmaster Classic. You know, I made it through the Bass Nation this year. We had a divisional and a national championship, and I want to talk to you about each event and kind of the tackle that I used to help me qualify for the Classic. So our first tournament was the Eastern Divisional on the St. Lawrence River in New York. And I basically had a 1-2 punch for that tournament. I had a technique that I used to cover water, and I also had a technique that I could just kind of saturate an area once I knew a high percentage that there was fish there. The technique that I used to cover water was I was using a Rains ring crawl. I was putting it on a 3/8 ounce ball head jig head, and basically what I was doing is I modified it a little bit. I cut some down and off the bait, and I actually used a Yamamoto skirt material to make kind of like a spider grub effect with the ring crawl. Now this bait really, it could have been one thing or the next as far as what it resembled. The gobies or the crawfish that these bass were feeding on. And I was able to take this and kind of, the water that I was fishing was really clear, so I could kind of see where there was a grass line and where there was hard bottom. And a lot of these areas where I was catching my fish were a hard bottom area where there was that connected to grass, but also that was in a current eddy. So I was able to cover a lot of water. I had to put the trolling motor on high all day, and when I was kind of in between areas, I would use this to cover water and fan cast into those areas where those transitions were. And it produced some really big bites on the first day, especially. Caught a really big largemouth on this on the first day, and definitely was a key bait for me when I was covering water trying to find fish. Now, I was using this on a Dobyns Champion Extreme DX764, 7-foot, 6-inch, medium heavy, 4-power rod. This is my all-time favorite rod for fishing a variety of different techniques, especially when you have to make long casts and you want to get positive hook sets, when you have a long cast out there. And it was key to make long casts because a lot of the fish I was catching was anywhere from 5 to 25 foot of water, but most of the emphasis was 5 to 15 foot. So I was able to kind of stay off the fish, make a long cast to them, and definitely the rod was key in that. And I was fishing braided line with a fluorocarbon leader, 15-pound Gamma Torque braid, 8-pound Gamma Edge fluorocarbon leader, using a double uni knot to attach the two lines, and I'm using about a 12-foot leader. Nice long leader. Water was clear, like I said, and that was my bait to really cover water. Caught some key bites on it. And when I found an area, or if I knew there was an area where it was a high percentage area, say a boulder, or a certain current break that had a good drop off next to it, or even just a good transition from rock to grass, I would pick up my Dobyns Champion Extreme 703, DX703. And this rod it's a rod that's used for shaky heads and a variety of different tube baits and stuff like that. Just a great all-around medium action rod. Not a whole lot of guys use it for drop shotting, but whenever I get up to Great Lakes, smallmouth, big smallmouth, this is my favorite drop shot rod. I mean, it is, you can see that it's still got good tip to it. It's got plenty of tip to work the bait properly. But the thing that I like about this rod versus their 2-power, which is kind of like the 702 is a standard drop shot rod, the 3-power, what it does is it gives me a little bit extra backbone, and it gives me a little bit more leverage when I'm fighting a big fish. I'm able to turn their head a little bit better. I'm able to keep that fish and keep control of that fish and get them coming at me. And in this tournament, I didn't get a whole lot of bites the second and third day. I didn't lose a single fish, so I fished clean. And a part of it was because of the equipment that I was using. There's no question about it. The right type of rod for the right type of hook sets, but also the right type of hook and obviously bait to trigger the bite and weight and so on and so forth. Now, the bait that I was using for the drop shot rig was a X-Zone Slammers. It's a skinny slammer, X-Zone Lure skinny slammer. It's a hand poured bait. Just whenever you get around bodies of water with gobies in it, this bait is just killer on a drop shot. You know, it is just an absolute killer. It just imitates those gobies perfectly. This color looked just like the gobies. It's kind of like a translucent green pumpkin with a kind of a pinkish pearl underside to it. Using a big hook with this is something I usually don't do either when I'm drop shot fishing. I usually like using the smallest hook I can get away with, because the smaller hook, the better the action. But these fish, they had such a small mouth and they had such a hard mouth that you needed, I believe that you needed a little bit extra gap to keep those fish hooked and not lose those fish, and you needed a sharp hook to penetrate. And this is the Gamakatsu, the Aaron Martin's Finesse style hook. I was using a 2/0, you know, and they got this coating on here that makes it just, it's so slippery. So I mean, your hook sets are even greater than their standard hooks, and just an awesome hook. I experimented with this hook prior to the event, first year I've ever played with it, and just a great hook, you know, 2/0. And I was using a Rains tungsten drop shot weight in a 1/2 ounce. You know, I usually don't use a heavy weight when I drop shot either, but my theory was the heavier weight, what it would do is when I would, you know, kind of make those casts into the areas, for one, we were dealing with a lot of current, so you needed the heavier weight in the current. But I think the other thing too is when you're, when that bait would fall fast, it would trigger reaction strikes sometimes. So being able to keep the bait and you know, make it a pinpoint cast and keep it in that certain seam in the eddy, but also get a reaction strike was key with that 1/2 ounce weight. And the line for this, I just downsized my line a little bit. I'm using a 10-pound Gamma Torque braid with a 6-pound Gamma Edge fluorocarbon leader. So that was the divisional. I ended up finishing in 5th place, which was good enough to make the national championship. And from there we went to the Ouachita River in Monroe, Louisiana. That body of water was different than anything I've ever fished before. It was shallow, it was very dirty water. You know, even when you got in areas with good water clarity, you still had less than 2 foot sometimes. So I was able to find a backwater slash an oxbow off the main river, Horseshoe Creek, and I spent all 3 days in there, and I had a 1-2 punch for that tournament as well. And you know what I learned in the morning, because this backwater had a lot of cypress trees that had it was like a cypress forest. It was pretty cool to fish, and it had areas where there was rows of trees next to each other. And I found that, you know, the areas that had the concentrations of fish, or the areas that actually caught fish on, were where there was a lot of cover but next to a decent drop off. There had to be at least 3 foot of water, if not 3 to 6 foot of water around these trees. So the deeper trees were the key. That was something that you know, those fish, I think they live there most of the year, and that's something they relate to in that oxbow. And so what I would do in the mornings before the sun came up is I would actually fan cast a square bill crankbait. And basically what I was doing is I'd cast it up sometimes to the big stumps, but there was root systems off those cypress trees, and I was able to kind of find those areas that had the, you know, maybe a clump of roots or something like that, and those fish in the morning would suspend around that root system. So I was able to take this crankbait, which is a WEC Zoom crankbait, WCE1 chartreuse blackback. This is the crankbait that Kevin Short won a lot of Elite Series tournaments with. I've never used it before, but I bought some for this particular tournament just because of the cypress trees. I did a little bit of research, and it turned out to be a key bait for me, especially on the 3rd day. And so I would take this square bill and I would you know, fan cast those areas, and you know, the best areas seemed to be roots that were off the main trunk of the cypress trees, but there had to be a depth change, you know, and I think those fish would suspend from that, say, 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 foot depth change. They'd suspend in those roots because the bait fish was around there. And I was able to take that crankbait and deflect off those root systems where I couldn't see, but I could feel them with the crankbait. And one of the key things that I found on the first day that was kind of a clue that led me into just sticking with it for the whole tournament, because I didn't catch big fish on the crankbait till the 3rd day. But the clue that I got was to make multiple casts to the to the cover. You know, if I felt like it was a good area, it was in the right area on the drop off, like I said with the roots, I would make, you know, 5, 6, 10 casts to it, and sometimes I'd get bit on the 6th cast. So that was a little clue that kind of, you know, helped me on that 3rd day. But I would use that crankbait in the morning till about 9 o'clock. Once 9 o'clock came around, the sun was up high enough to where it would position the fish around those cypress trees and the trunks, and it would position them tighter. So what I was able to do, and you know, 12 of the 15 fish that I weighed in that tournament came on a Rains craw tube. This is the Rains craw tube, black and blue because the water was dirty. And you can see this bait has arms to it. And basically what I did was I took the arms off, and you can use, you know, when you Texas rig this, you can keep the arms on. What the arms are going to do is it's going to make it track, it's going to make it fall a little bit straighter. So if you're fishing around docks and you're fishing around vertical cover, you're able to let that bait fall straight down alongside that vertical cover. But I wanted an erratic action, but a subtle action. And what I was able to do was just, you know, pinch those arms off, and basically it's basically just like a normal flipping tube, but this bait is it's unique. I'll show you. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this bait, when you look at it, you'll see that the back side of the bait is flat, and they did that for a reason. It makes it glide. It makes a very unique gliding action to it. So when you take those arms off of there and you Texas rig it, it glides really, really nice. Now this bait, in my opinion, I've never been a fan of flipping tubes, just because you lose a lot of fish, until this bait came along this year. This is a bait that's new for this year. One thing about this bait is it has enough plastic that the bait doesn't roll down on the hook. So especially sometimes when you're fishing heavy cover, you know, with the normal tube, a flipping tube, the bait just naturally rolls down on the hook, but you also lose a lot of fish. So this bait eliminates that. Just a great action. That flat side makes it have a unique darting action, and basically I was Texas rigging it. I started off with a Rains tungsten slip sinker and a 1/2 ounce in practice. That's what I was catching them on practice, and I had to lighten my weight each day almost. And the reason for that is because before the tournament, the day before the tournament, we had a big storm come through, big front come through, and the first day of the tournament we're fishing post-frontal conditions, so I couldn't get bit on the 1/2 ounce. And what I did immediately, when I'm not getting bit on a heavier presentation, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit, you know, let it fall a little bit slower, because it's not like the fish moved. You know, the one good thing about when the front comes through is the fish actually get tighter to cover. So I knew those fish weren't going to leave the area. They were just going to get tighter to cover. I just had to figure out what triggered them, and that extra, you know, that little bit of a weight change was key on the first day. I was using a 3/8 ounce Rains tungsten slip sinker the first day. The hook that I used with this was a Gamakatsu 3/0 Superline EWG, and you know, one thing I did with this hook that it doesn't come stock like this. I'm just gonna slide this up and show you guys this. For one, I was snelling. The knot that I used was a snell knot. And what the snell knot does is it kicks the hook up. So when the fish grabs it, that hook, because of that snell knot, it kicks the hook up. So when it grabs it, the hook is pointing to the roof of their mouth. So when you set the hook, you're getting a lot more positive hook set. So the snell knot was big on this hook. But one thing I did with the hook is what I would do, and this is I already you know, did it with this hook. You take pliers, and what you want to do is you want to pull that and kind of bend that point out. And basically, with this hook, it comes stock with the point is almost in line with the line tie. And I noticed that by just taking that, you know, point, and you have to go behind the barb and pull it out a little bit, get that point to ride above that line tie, you're going to get a lot more positive hookups. And I didn't lose a single fish in the whole tournament, so it definitely was a good adjustment that I made with this tube. And so the key, you know, to fishing the craw tube is I would concentrate on areas with shade, but also where they're the thickest cover that I could find, you know, where there was a couple cypress trees close to each other. you know, in any type of brush from a laydown that was next to a cypress tree, but just looking for any type of something that would create a canopy or something that would, you know, just give them a little bit more cover to get close to. You know, when, like I said, when you're fishing post-frontal conditions, those fish will get tighter to cover, and I was looking to try to make casts as accurate and as tight to that cover as I could, and that was the key. You know, is fishing in those really thick shaded areas with heavy cover. You know, one of the key things for me too when I was fishing those cypress trees, when I was flipping this Rains craw tube, was being stealth and just taking my time and not making a lot of noise, not making trolling motor noise, which what I would do is I would kind of keep the trolling motor on low power, you know, 30–40%. And when I approached an area, what I would do is I would drop my power poles. You know, by far the biggest key for me to being stealth was being able to get close enough to those trees, drop my power poles, not have to use the trolling motor any which way at all, and just be able to take more casts than I normally would if I was on the trolling motor fighting it against the wind and stuff like that. So without those power poles, there's no doubt about it, I wouldn't have been able to have as clean of a presentation and be as stealth as I was. The first day, like I said, I caught him on that the Rains craw tube with a 3/8 ounce. The second day was even tougher. So what I had to do was I had to go to a 1/4 ounce, and I ended up finishing out the tournament with the 1/4 ounce second and third day. That little bit of adjustment made all difference in the world. I could not get bit on a 3/8 ounce. It was just too fast of a fall. So as soon as I went to the 1/4, that's when I started getting bites. And you know, the other thing that I did too, fishing around a lot of the heavy wood and stuff like that, is I double pegged my weight. Not just one bobber stop, I used 2. So that was you know, like I said, I weighed 12 out of the 15 fish in the tournament on that, and I was using a Dobyns Champion 736 with a Lew's BB1 Pro 7:1 gear ratio, 16-pound Gamma Edge fluoro. And you know, this 736 is anytime you're fishing heavy cover and you want to, you know, get fish away from cover, this rod, it is amazing on how you can turn their head with this rod and, I mean, get them right in the boat fast. You know, positive hook sets, but you know, just you can rip fish out of cover with the 736. By far my favorite pitching stick of all time, and it's mean, man. I mean, I had great hook sets and got the fish to the boat. I didn't mention on the crankbait rod, it was a Savvy, Dobyns Savvy 703, Lew's BB1 Pro 7:1 gear ratio as well, 14-pound Gamma Edge fluoro, a little bit thinner than what you would typically use in that situation, but I wanted to get the bait a little bit deeper. So, but the Gamma stuff is so tough, you never had a problem with the line. Just great line around heavy cover, super abrasive resistant, and you know, that the 703 Savvy is not a typical rod that I would use for cranking. I like the Dobyns Glass Series rods when I crank, but anytime when I fish around heavier cover, if it's heavy grass or wood in this situation, I use graphite, and the 703 is a graphite rod. You can see that this rod has a good tip to it. It's a medium action. It's got good tip to it, and it's just a great rod for a variety of different things. I actually use this rod for my prop baits, any type of top water style bait, pop bars, even spinner baits. This is just a super versatile rod. I love the 703. I love how the balance is on it. You can make those nice roll casts, and that was you know, that's the equipment and the techniques that I used for these tournaments to get me to the Bassmaster Classic. So I hope, you know, some of this helped you guys. Tune in to Bassmaster.com for the 2015 Bassmaster Classic on Lake Hartwell.